All right, if a person is rescued out of trafficking, what kind of condition are they in mentally and physically, and how does the healing begin?
Okay, so to speak to that, I will say that I am not a psychologist, and I also have never been trafficked. So I can only share with what I've seen, what the research, what it tells me, and what I know. So individuals, first off, individuals coming out of trafficking, the stories are vastly different. So, if you have an individual who was first abused in their home beginning at 3, 4, and 5, and they were abused by a sibling or an uncle or an aunt until they were maybe 11, and then they ran away, and then when they were they met their pimp on the street, and then their pimp, the person they meet on the street becomes their pimp, and then they're trafficked for, let's say, another 6 years. So now that individual is now 17 years old. So we have a 17-year-old girl who really has been abused from the age of 3 and 4. She's going to have a completely different emotional state, mental state, and physical state compared to a girl who is maybe 17 years old coming out of trafficking. She was raised in a functional household, and then at the age of 15, she met a boyfriend that was slightly older. He becomes her trafficker, and while living in her parents' house, she was trafficked for 2 years in her own community. Those are completely different individuals with, I don't want to say a completely different set of needs, but you have a different starting point. Right. You'll also have individuals that were trafficked in their family from maybe from 5 only up until 14 or 15, until they went through full levels of puberty, and then the trafficking ended. But then they're saying at 16, 17 in early adulthood, I recognize that this was all wrong and I probably need some help. So that's a completely different person as well.
I guess what I'm saying, what can we expect? I mean, low self-esteem.
So we're talking high levels
multiple abortions.
Potentially multiple. Potentially they have
STDs.
Yes, potentially all of that. So we're talking about someone who has high levels of trauma, very low self-esteem, not understanding their own self-worth, believing that everything they do has to be modified to meet the certain situation. So I have to be this in this situation, I have to be this in this situation. Really having like a chameleon personality, because you adapt to whatever situation you're in for survival. So individuals potentially who have issues of mental illness, not clinical, but survival. I would call that survival. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but individuals who have developed schizophrenia for the purpose of surviving. If you're suffering multiple rapes over multiple courses of days, your body, to preserve itself, will split its mind, and so you'll have different personalities going on. But that's where all of that counseling then comes in, where you're trying to put a mind back together that has been broken and skewed because of the abuse, and working through each level of trauma that has taken place, all the while addressing physical needs. So addressing if there are multiple STDs, or if there are issues of just basic diabetes because you haven't had a functioning health, appetite, not appetite, but you haven't nutrition. You haven't had functioning nutrition your entire life. So you have physical repercussions because of that. If you happen to had multiple abortions, you have a lot of gynecological issues related to that. So addressing all of those physical needs,
So what can a church do to help, or society take to stop this?
Okay, so I think the first one, and it's always the obvious one, but I want to really talk about this more in depth than just being the obvious answer. But the first answer is prayer. But again, I'm not talking prayer, Lord, let's bless, we are free, what they're doing is great endeavor. And I'm not mocking that. But I want to compare it to, I was reading just this morning in Mark, where there's this boy has demons, and some of the disciples, they've gone up to the Mount of Transfiguration, and they come down, and the boy had these demons, and they weren't able to cast the demons out, and the disciples are saying to Jesus, what do we do here? And Jesus cast the demons out, and then later to the side they say, well, why couldn't we do that? And Jesus' response was, this needed much prayer and fasting. So the issue of human trafficking is not going away until we have Christians on their knees interceding, significant prayer. This is demonic, because it's all based upon taking away our dignity as humans. So that's spiritual warfare. And so this is, while it's about individuals and about people, and we are free is here to serve people, we recognize that there's a much bigger battle going on here. So if you're a Christian, we need to have serious prayer and intercession and fasting on the very issue of trafficking, that there's a restoration of seeing the dignity and humanity of every individual, that we are created in the image of God, and that we as a society stop with this culture of it's acceptable to purchase sex services or to treat certain individuals in a certain manner. And that's only coming through some serious prayer. So the first issue is prayer. Second issue, I would say, for the men of our churches to take a bold stand on shaming the culture of buying. So human trafficking is not going away until we don't have buyers. But we won't have buyers. Like, the number of buyers won't be reduced until we start to attach some level of shame to the fact and bringing up that this is wrong. Pornography is a huge issue in America, and there have been some studies done by, I believe it was the Barnum Group, that pornography in America is far worse in the Bible Belt than anywhere else in America. So being here in the Bible Belt now, I think it's for men in our churches to call out other men who view pornographic images, whether that's through print media or video media. It's an opening door for everything else. I know I have met a gentleman, I heard a gentleman speak who was very profound. He was arrested and went to jail for trying to buy services from a 15-year-old. And he said he got to that point, it first started with viewing print media of pornography. And it was this spiraling circle downward, where ultimately he would have never believed that he would have ever been trying to purchase services from a 15-year-old, but he was. And so until we back up and start to change, and we have other men stand up and call out what is really happening, we're not going to have that. We're not going to have any statistics dropping. We talk a lot about parents with their daughters, how to protect their daughters. Parents have to talk to their sons as well, not just because sons can be victimized. Your sons could be victimized, but also I think that our young sons or our teenage sons, they play a different role, because there's like this continuum of either you're being victimized yourself or you're a protector over here. So if they see something that's wrong or odd or behavior, stand up and say something about it. I have seen cases of girls being saved from falling into trafficking and being saved because a boy saw something and stood up and said, I'm not going to let this happen. For young men, if their friends are engaged in viewing pornographic images, speaking up and saying, do you know what this is? Do you know that individuals in pornography are likely being trafficked? This isn't an innocent endeavor. This isn't a hobby. This affects somebody's lives. And until we start to attach some shame to that, nothing is going to change. So there's prayer, there's men standing up and speaking out about trafficking, obviously parents educating their children and talking about this more and seeing this. And then there's, you could support local organizations, other organizations that are in this fight, taking those action steps firsthand. So here at We Are Free, we're starting to work and develop even a program that we would go out and speak with men in churches and talking about this very issue of standing up and being, I don't want to say protector, defender, standing up and speaking out against, taking a more vocal role just on the fact that trafficking is wrong. And then there's Bible studies that we have that churches can do. We offer that. You could have anyone from our organization come and speak to the local church specifically about what we do. You could follow us on our Facebook page or our web page, and every organization needs money. We continue to need money. God has provided miraculously for what we have now. All of what we've done, we have built 10,000 square feet of new construction, and we're about to open, and all of that has been done through private donors, small donors, big donors. But if you can pray and if you have some money to give, we would ask that you give.
All right. So what can a church do?
I would say the very first thing they should do is have somebody come and have a program at your church that talks more specifically and greater in depth about this issue. I go and we speak at churches all throughout the country. So go and speak, and really, if you had one individual who in your community would take a stand in your community against trafficking, you could start to work with the local police department of what's happening in our community, do we see issues of trafficking here, what can we do so that we don't accept trafficking in our community. And that really would start by first having someone come and talk to you about, such as myself or someone from our organization, what would be those steps to look at in your community and who would you want to talk to.
I know a lot of state troopers and local police are good contacts for your church to invite, and they can let you know what's going on in the city and what to look out for, and what to report and who to report to. So. All right. Anything else you want to share? No,
I want to say thank you. And I don't want this to be, my fear all the time is that, in these interviews we talk about this, and this is horrible. But it's not so horrible that it's too big of an issue to address. So this is like a Niagara Falls problem, but our God is bigger than Niagara Falls. And so when we start to join together and work together, we can push back against this and make a difference. We can make a difference in the lives of individuals coming out of trafficking, and we can make a difference in our culture where we start to shift and change from this culture of buying individuals for sex services to really starting to see people for who they are, and that buying sex it's shameful because it damages individuals and it steals people's humanity. So we can do that all together if we work together.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.